Welcome back. In lecture 14, we will cover different types of transportation planning service, and this is part 1 of the lecture, and after this we will have part 2. So the different concepts that we will cover in this lecture are different kinds of the common types of transportation planning service, reveal preference and statement preference service, contingent valuation, conjoint analysis, typical travel and a typical travel behavior survey. So first we will cover some of the common surveys in transportation planning. As you can see, the first one is inventory of road network systems, and this actually means there are when we measure the physical characteristics and hindrances of transportation infrastructure, such as a road network or a flyover or underpass. For example, we want to measure the road width, so we can for a particular link, if the road width more or less same, we can measure it at 2 sections, whereas if the road varies a lot, in many Indian cities we find that the road is of different sizes at different locations, the same road, and there we have to, at every change in the size or width of the road, we need to do one survey. So this is a inventory survey for the road network, and as you can see, this table actually over here shows that we have to first measure the link ID, and within a link the section ID of that particular road. These are 2 identifiers that we give, and then we can write what kind of carriageway it is. It is basically could be selected from a set of options, like for example we have arterial or local or collector and so on. So these are the options which could be given 1 or 2, and it could be given along with the survey, and the surveyor can just put a 2 or 1 over there as per the requirement. Then width of road is in meters, number of lanes, this is a number, conditions road, this could be options again, like for example there are a lot of potholes, there are moderate number of potholes and so on, so we can give different options. Encroachment, it's a binary response where we can take yes or no, and then in nature of encroachment, this could be a subjective response, like we can write down what kind of encroachment we can see, or it could be a set of options as well. Then continuity of footpath, it's again a binary response, yes or no. And then footpath width, it's in millimeter, shoulder width, it's in millimeter, drainage type, again a set of options, parking length, parking width, width of service road, and so on. So this is a typical survey of road inventory, which of course you can add more number of parameters in that, but this is how this needs to be done. But the takeaway from this particular slide is we can write this kind of options along with this survey, so that we can, instead of writing it down, we can put in the numbers, and we can, so that later on it is easier to also enter the data in the computer. So the next survey that I will explain is a typical travel diary, and this could be conducted at the household through personal interviews. And as you can see in this particular survey, the first part, of course, starts with the survey details, like the name of the surveyor, the name of the respondent, the date and the time and the address where the survey is being conducted. This is to trace back in case there is some problem. We can go back to the person's house, or we can call back the person, and we also have a record of at what time the survey is being conducted. Then there is a socioeconomic profile of the person whom we are surveying, like the size of the household, the duration of the stay, when this family came to this particular area, and then tenure of housing, is it owned or rented, monthly household income. They may give this data, they may not give this. Instead, we can also take data response in monthly household expenditures and also the amount of money they save. Using this, we can also have an idea about what sort of money or earnings this family has got. Then number of students in the household, number of earners in the households, number of vehicles owned by the households. These are the different socioeconomic parameters that we take. And if we have this data, we can again categorize the sample again into smaller homogeneous sizes, so that we can generalize the responses from those particular groups of samples. So that is why we request socioeconomic information. Then along with socioeconomic profile of the household, we can also have socioeconomic profile at the personal level. That means for each person living inside the household, we can have certain numbers. It depends on where we are doing the survey and the average household size for that particular area. We can take relationship with the head of the family. We are maybe serving the head of the family. We can say this is a son, this is a daughter, this is wife or spouse, then male or female, age, education, occupation, and individual income. These are the data that we can also collect for individuals. So this was household level data. This is individual level data, but both are socioeconomic profile of the surveys. Then along with this data, because we are collecting travel diary, we are also taking the data on the trips that this particular household makes or the different persons living in the household make. So we have the person number over here. So we have already recorded the person number earlier. We also take his trip number. He may be conducting many trips in a typical day. So we write the origin of the trip, the destination of the trip. The origin could be his home, or it could be a ward number. Destination could be his office. It could be the ward number of the office or the name of that particular location. Then whatever mode he is taking, the first mode, the trip length, the waiting time, the travel time, cost of that particular mode. Does he does a transfer? Does he go opt for a second mode, and so on? So we can also give him another, if we feel that the person makes more than one transfer, we can keep on adding this. And he can also record the other trips in a similar way. Now, this is a very, very common, this is the very typical part of the questionnaire, but based on certain kinds of travel diaries, we can have certain other informations which could be also asked. Like, for example, even though we are taking origin and destination, if a person is traveling by bus, probably we should also take the origin bus stop name, or if he is traveling by other kinds of maybe paratransit or so on, so we can take the stop name from which he is getting on that particular bus. So his origin may be from a particular locality, but his bus stop may be somewhere else. So that is why we need to take both. Similarly, we can take the destination bus stop or the stop and the actual destination. Then the transfer bus stop or stop where actually he is transferring, so that also we can take. Then we can take certain mode specific variables. For example, as we discussed during our when we were discussing comprehensive mobility plans, so there we were discussing that, okay, comfort, convenience, these are the factors we need to consider when we propose public transit and other modes. So we can take data on bus crowding using an interval scale or a ratio scale, or bus safety using an ordinal scale, or bus type using a nominal scale. So this can add up along with this. So along with waiting time, travel time, cost, we can also take bus crowding, bus safety, bus type, but this is only for bus. For other modes, we cannot take this data, or we can take other kinds of data. So then we can also have trip specific variables, like we have not taken the trip time, but trip time is also important, which we can take at what time the trip started. So for trip chaining, or if you want to determine not only the trip but the tour or even the total activity pattern for a particular day, then time becomes very important. Then trip purpose, and if the trip is escort trip or not, that means if the person is accompanying another person. For example, a father is taking his kid to a school, and this is a escort trip, and then he is going to his office. And so it becomes another trip, but he is not escorting anyone. So that's why trip purpose, and if that is an escort trip or not, that also plays a role. Then we can have additional variables like neighborhood and access mode characteristics at access end and both also at the egress end. That means wherever he is getting down, what kind of local accessibility is there, means walkability and all these features. Then regional accessibility, how accessible is that particular zone. Then density, this all determines what sort of mode choices he will make. And then he can also have records about the access mode. Suppose he is using a paratransit to go to his main mode, which is a bus transit or a metro rail. So that access mode, time and cost, that also could be recorded. Or access mode could become mode 1. Whichever way you can feel convenient, this survey could be done, and that also means that we can have multiple modes in one trip. Finally, we can also have some additional policy variables which could be part of the travel diary, like parking price in the area where his destination is, or the parking availability, congestion charge along the way. So all these things determines what sort of mode choice behavior a person will do. So that is also could be part of the travel diary. Then for traffic volume count, as you can see for a particular study area, we can have cordon points, we can have screen lines. For example, there is a river, so this could be screen points, or it could be a railway line, so we can measure the traffic in this particular locations, and it could be and along at these screen points we can also measure the traffic. So usually traffic volume count survey could be done for only peak hour, or it could be done across the entire day, and it could be for a period of 24 hours or 48 hours to understand the variability of the data, and it could be at different screen lines, and it could be done manually or using sensors or using video photography, whichever way is convenient for that particular area. And as you can see in the survey, we are measuring the number of cycles, two-wheelers, cars for every hour. And this means that either we can continuously count. If it's an automated system, then we can count it continuously, but if we are doing it manually, probably we have to do it in sections of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then take a break and then again repeat it again. Otherwise, if fatigue may creep in. So this is how volume count surveys could be done. Roadside origin destination surveys are basically intercept surveys where we can ask people where they are going. We can ask for their odometrics and travel pattern, and usually we do it for walking days and also during weekends. We can do intercept surveys, or we can do it through automatic number plate recognition systems. That means we can read the vehicle number plate, and we can also determine the origin and destination of a particular vehicle. Similarly, we can conduct speed delay surveys. Here we determine, we need to do speed delay surveys so that we can understand the level of service of a particular road, congestion level, delay causing factor, running speed of a particular vehicle, and so on. There are different ways we can do that, and we can either repeat this if we use a moving observation method. That means we are sitting in the vehicle using which we are recording the speed or the delay. There we can do multiple runs to record, take repeated observations. We can use different kinds of sensors as well. We can use video photography, and again the same automatic number plate recognition could be used to record the number of times a vehicle stops and the reason for the stop and the time of that particular stop. So, and we can use 2 stopwatches so that there is no error in the data collection. So, next, coming to travel behavior surveys, these are more specialized surveys where we need to understand how the travel behavior changes, and with introduction of new policies or introduction of new modes, or with the existing mode, if we change certain parameters, how the choices of people changes, or not only the mode choice, it could be a route choice, it could be a destination choice, many things can change. And it could be this revealed preference and stated preference surveys. These are 2 basic concepts of doing 2 different ways of doing surveys, and both of them are used in travel behavior and also in many choice studies. And revealed preference surveys of travel behavior include determining preferences based on decision makers' actual choices in the real context. So, actual choices in the real context is important. That means based on what we observe, that means a person is using a particular mode, and in a real situation we can say that this is the mode choice of that particular person. So, that is why we call it a revealed preference survey. Whereas in stated preference surveys, it is a method used to analyze decision makers' choices when there are hypothetical choice alternatives. That means, suppose I ask that, okay, if a metro rail comes in your route, or will you avail that? So, that means right now there may not be a metro rail, but in future metro rail comes, and we can ask if a person will shift to metro if it comes. So, this is one. And second, if we use the same modes, like for example, there is bus service, there is paratransit service, and a person can use his personal car. If I give them an option like, okay, well, the same bus service, but if we improve the frequency of the bus service so that everybody gets a seat, if we improve the quality of the bus, will he use the bus or not? So, a new attributes or new hypothetical levels of attributes of existing choices could also be considered when we ask people about their preferences, and this is because people are stating what they would do in a hypothetical situation. That is why it is called a stated preference survey. One drawback of stated preference is that it may not match actual preferences because of systematic bias in SP responses. That is understood. For example, Uh, if I'm asking a person, will you choose? He may say yes or no. Like for example, in most cases, when we ask people that, will you pay for certain features which will improve the environment? People will say yes. But actually, people, or like, will you pay extra for buying a bag which is not made of plastic? People will say yes, but maybe they will not do that when they are doing the actual shopping. So their actual behavior may vary from the behavior that they have stated that they will do. So that is one of the biggest drawback of SP service, and both RP and SP choice behavior is based on the neoclassical theory of consumer behavior, which states that individuals will choose the alternative which has got the highest utility. That means using both these service, we are able to get the choices of individuals, and using that choices we can determine or develop statistical measures and models to say what influences their mode choice. And usually we assume that the more higher utility a particular mode has got, more is or chance of that mode being chosen, or more utility a choice has got, choice alternative has got, more chance of that choice to be actually chosen, more of that alternative to be actually chosen. So in stated preference theory, it has been there for a long time. So since 1970s, in market research, people have been using stated preference theories. Economists are a bit skeptical about stated preference, but in market research, this is done because it is very convenient to do this kind of research. And one of the there are different ways to use stated preference theory, or rather different techniques that we use to determine or analyze the responses obtained through stated preference theory. One is contingent valuation, another is conjoint analysis. So these are the two major ways we can use stated preference theory to come out with the or analyze the results that from this kind of service. And conjoint analysis was the first form of SP study introduced in 1960s in the field of mathematical psychology. And then Green and Rao exploited this method in consumer choice studies and made SP methods popular also in academic research. And in travel behavior survey, in travel behavior research, Bates in 1983 and then in 1984 conducted SP experiments on choice of trains and bus using 16 pairwise comparisons using hypothetical levels of 5 variables. That means he changed the the levels for 5 variables, which include the main mode in vehicle time, the second mode in vehicle time, the walk time to the mode, wait time, and the cost of that particular mode. He changed the values to hypothetical values which are currently not present, and found out if a person will choose a bus and train, and also the relative cost of time and all these things that was determined. So this was the instance where this conjoint analysis was also used in travel behavior research. So in contingent valuation, now looking into these two methods in detail, in contingent valuation, which is also known as the CV method, it is used particularly in experiments dealing with willingness to pay or willingness to accept. So willingness to accept for a particular good or service. So we ask people, are you willing to pay a certain amount of money, or are you willing to accept a particular service at a particular cost or at a particular level. So these are the options that we give to people, and people can choose that. So this is called contingent valuation, and this contingent valuation method could be again categorized into 3 types. One is open-ended CV, and this is where we directly ask the person how much you are willing to pay, and he states a particular amount. But this, you can understand, a lot of bias can come in, because it's very difficult for a person to say at a particular time when he's actually not choosing that particular, or he's not facing that choice, to say the exact amount that he's going to pay or what his exact situation is at that point of time. So some bias of course arises, but still this is a very easy method to determine how much a person is willing to pay. Then there is referendum CV, where a person is asked if he or she is willing to pay a certain amount. So we give them a particular value, which is a more realistic valuation of that particular alternative, and he may say that if he is going to choose that value or not. And then a person can also choose from a list of amounts that he or she is willing to pay. So that means we give him a list of options and then we ask that, okay, are you willing to pay? So in this example that you can see over here, in this particular questions that we are asking, how much would you pay in INR for installation of water supply connection? And the other is how much would you pay in INR for water consumption monthly? So these are two amounts in INR that we are directly asking, but we are giving him options like 1000, 1500, 2000 to 2500. So he can pick up one of those options which is willing to pay. So of course, if I ask him that if I give him these options, he will choose the list option in most cases. But if I ask the question in this way, like, will you pay this one? He may say yes. Then if we say that, okay, if I increase the value to this one, will you still pay? He may say yes. And then if I say, if I increase the value to 2000, he may say, no, I am not willing to pay 2000. So this is also another way we can say that, okay, a person is able to pay for 1500. That is a more realistic, better way to estimate compared to open-ended questions. So we can, along with this kind of service, we can also ask the reason why a person is not willing to or cannot afford this kind of value, which could be very important in the life. So we can add other questions also in this kind of studies. So in conjoint analysis, it's a method where a person is subjected to a hypothetical scenario, like the study that was done by Bates earlier that I was discussing about. And this is where each scenario is a combination of certain levels of some factors. I will discuss this in detail. A factor and its level are decided by the researcher through literature study and other observations. Or for example, a new AC service bus comes in. So air conditioned service is a new level of service that can be coming into the bus service. And or it could be based on certain things which is not right now, but based on literature study or availability in other areas, geographical areas. You can say these are the options also that we can be possible to give over there. And the respondent is supposed to make a choice from a defined choice set, keeping in mind this hypothetical scenario. So we first tell him that this is a hypothetical scenario and will he choose if these are the options that is given to them. Now coming to this example, this is a scenario where we are asking people about their stated, or we are asking to people to state their preference about the choice of either bus or auto rickshaw. So over here in the first step, if you see the parameters that we are using, this is bus fare, waiting time at bus stop, crowding level in bus stop, auto rickshaw fare and delay in journey by bus. So these are the different parameters based on which we are determining the choice. In addition to these parameters, there could be socioeconomic variables, trip characteristics and all these things which could also influence the choice, but these are the choices which vary, or these are the levels which vary. And here in the first row, we would first take the current trip details, like current bus fare is how much, current waiting time is how much for this particular person or this particular bus route, then crowding level is how much, what he experiences, how much is the auto rickshaw fare in that particular route, how much is the delay in journey by bus based on his experience. And then I give him options like, this is scenario 1, which is if I increase the fare by 50%, if I increase the fare by, if we increase the waiting time by 10%, or if I make the waiting time just 10 minutes, or if I make the crowding level 50% more than seat capacity, if the auto rickshaw fare is 40% increase from the current fare, and if the delay remains same, which one will he choose? So he has to go through these options and then give a best possible choice that is possible. So as you can understand, if the options are too many, then again people will not be able to make the right choice. So here we are using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters. So we can go till 7 or maybe maximum 8 parameters, but that is the maximum extent possible. Beyond that, if we create a combination more than that, then people would not be able to give the right result. So a combination of 4, 5, 6 is the most ideal. So there is another point that can also, so in the next scenario, we can see that the levels change. So the parameters remain same. The levels that we are giving him as option changes. For example, this was 50% increase. This becomes same as current. Then waiting time at bus stop was 10 minutes. This becomes 15 minutes. So 50% more than seat capacity. So this crowding level also changes. This remains same. This becomes 5 minutes increase in delay. And then will his choice be remaining same, or what will be his choice in this particular scenario? So if I go in a vertical way, we can see that waiting time as bus truck, there could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 6 minutes, and 6 minutes even same. So there are three options. In bus fare, there could be 50% increase, same as current. There is no other option. In case of auto rickshaw fare, it could be 40% increase, 25% increase, and 50% decrease as well. And then in crowding level, there are 2 times the seat capacity, less than equal to seat capacity, 50% increase. There could be other options as well, which we are not able to see in this particular choice set. So that means when we have so many parameters and so many levels, we can have many combinations that is possible. But we don't give all the combinations to a person. We only give a certain number of combinations to a person so that he is limited to only 4 choices. So if I keep on giving him more choices, his results may be random. So he may pick up random choices at the end. So that's why we limit it to 4 or 5, this number of scenarios that he has to evaluate. And similarly, and if you also can understand, if we have got 4 parameters or 5 parameters and we have got so many levels, we have so many combinations that is possible. So there is another way to reduce the number of combinations, or rather use the combinations which are more appropriate. So it's called fractional factorial design, and which will be taken up in the next lecture. So when we compare the RP and SP surveys, we can see that the RP data is based on the results of actual behavior, and it is consistent with the behavior in the real market, whereas SP data is expression under hypothetical situation, and it may be inconsistent with the behavior in the real market. That means people may not be doing the same choices that they state, and we can only use the existing alternatives in the RP survey. That means we can only find the choice out of the available alternatives. Whereas in SP survey, we can add a few more non-existing alternatives to see how a person's choice change when more alternatives are possible. Then in RP survey, the range of the attributes are limited. There may be measurement errors because of non-availability of data and other reasons, and there could be possibility of collinearity among the attributes. Whereas in SP data, we can control this collinearity to some extent because we are designing the survey scenarios and all. We can extend the range of the attributes level. We can use new levels of each attributes, and the number of measurement errors is also less. So in the choice set is also not that clear in case of RP data, because the person may not be aware of all the choices that is available to him. Whereas in SP data, a person can see exactly what are the choices available to him, and then he can take a decision. And number of responses could be only 1 in case of RP data, but in the case of SP data, we can have multiple responses. So along with RP and SP studies, we can also have surveys. We can also have joint RP-SP surveys. We will take both the RP response as well as the SP response, and using a joint RP-SP method of estimation, we can also overcome the negative or the problems of both RP and SP methods and harness the best positive parts of this particular surveys, and we can come out with a more robust estimate. So SP data has more greater depth of information because we can add more information, more levels and so on compared to RP data, but it also has got more higher bias or chance of error. And so combining both RP and SP methods result in lesser bias as compared to SP only models, and increased model accuracy as compared to RP only models. So finally, we estimate these models using and we incorporate a scale parameter to mitigate the unequal variances in RP and SP data. So this will be taken up when we cover our mode choice models. Then we will take up this joint RP-SP model as well. So finally, I would like to discuss a little bit about a travel behavior survey that we conducted earlier. So this survey, this will give you an example about a very complex survey, how it is conducted, and how our survey which combines both the RP part and the SP part and so on. So here we have conducted a survey of people coming to railway stations, and the target of this survey was to determine or the purpose of this research was to improve bicyclist accessibility or determine the causes which prevent a person to use bicycle to come to a station. And the hypothesis was, if people can come with their bicycles to stations, then use of paratransit and other polluting transport would be lessened. So for this we did this survey. So as you can see, in the first part is the surveyor's name, date, form number, location, and all the details and the time of the survey. Then we took the first part is the socioeconomic characteristics of the person whom we are surveying, which includes age, gender, education, income, occupation, and then vehicle ownership, driving license, household size, and so on. Then we take his trip characteristics. So this trip characteristics is not only the trip characteristics from his home to the railway station, but the entire trip characteristics. Why? Because depending on his total journey, he may choose a bicycle or he may not choose a bicycle. For example, his total journey is for a very long journey for 2 hours, and he has to change maybe from use a train, and from train he has to use a paratransit and then reach his destination. Probably he feels that, okay, if I use cycle, then I will be too tired after, or my attire may get disturbed, or it may not remain proper. So in that case, people may think that, well, I may not use a bicycle. So depending on the length of the journey, depending on characteristics of the journey, people may decide to use a bicycle or not. So that's why in this particular part where we are recording the trip characteristics, we are taking his origin, location, stop one location, like we were discussing in the travel survey, that we can also add the stop location, then access mode, access distance, access cost, transfer station location, travel mode, travel distance, travel cost. This is stop 1 to stop 2, then stop 2 to stop 3, and then stop 3 to destination, where we also take the egress mode, egress distance, egress cost, and finally his destination and location. So along with this, we also ask him, how frequently do you travel to rail station using bicycle? Then if not, what are the alternative modes he or she uses? So this is the things that we use. So this is the first part, which is mostly about trip characteristics and socioeconomic characteristics. In the next part, we conduct a perception survey, which is using attitudinal skills. So we determine which are the factors which are helps a person, or which creates a perception in his mind about bicycling, and which are the factors he feels which are important. And then we try to also determine which are the factors with which he is currently satisfied and at what level the satisfaction is, so that we can understand if his satisfaction about bicycle improves, then probably he may choose bicycle in future. So this is the perception survey part of this particular questionnaire. So one was the actual RP part. This is also RP, but this is not the numerical values or actual values of his choices, but these are his attitudinal values or the perceptions. So here we can see that when we are talking about factors affecting bicycle use, we are talking about safety and security, safety from collision, safety from bicycle theft, safety from assault harassment. Then we are looking into traffic conditions, high-speed traffic flow along the route, unsafe conditions for bicyclists at intersections, high proportion of heavy vehicles. Then coming to comfort and convenience, difficult to carry back along when we are cycling, then exposure to climate and weather conditions. So these are the different things which can determine his satisfaction or his perception about bicycling. So similarly, we have efficiency, where we can talk about if it is easy to park the bicycle, if it enables door-to-door transport. The cycle actually allows you to start from your home, and then competitive. Then is it flexibility of its usage, or other traffic jams and other problems. So these are certain things which were put in efficiency. And infrastructure characteristics, like if there is a segregation for motor vehicles traffic, that means if there is a segregated bicycle lane or a bicycle path or a bicycle corridor, then if there is a parking facility, if there are amenities like rain shelters, repair shops, street lighting, which is very important in bicycling. So we are asking about people about their perceptions about all these things. So we are asking them, is it in two things? We are asking the level of importance of these particular factors and level of satisfaction. Now, level of importance is very important. Why? Because certain things which we are currently not, but the user may feel that these are the things which could be provided. So level of importance will actually reveal those things. So things which are rated very high, very important, and it is not available, that means those should be provided in future. Whereas when we are talking about level of satisfaction, we can capture the existing condition. So things which are not present right now cannot be recorded. So if there is no segregation from traffic, that means there is no bicycle lane, then we, of course, we cannot give a satisfaction rating for that. Similarly, if there is no amenities like rain shelters, we cannot give any rating for that, but we can give an importance rating for that. So both this perceptional surveys, like what is the importance of a particular factor and what is a person's satisfaction with that particular factor, both are important, and this is captured in this part of the survey. And we can also have overall satisfaction with bicycling, but that is only relevant for people who are bicycling, and or even for people who are non-bicycling, but that it's again it's a sort of hypothetical satisfaction. So we can also relate that overall satisfaction with each factors of satisfaction, and then we can also find out which are the ones which are actually influencing the overall satisfaction by doing regression models and so on. So these are the different ways we can incorporate perception in our surveys. Then finally, we are doing a stated preference survey using conjoint analysis. 4 scenarios have been included and 8 parameters are being tested, and each one has got multiple levels. And as you can see, we can first we are taking the existing scenario of the current transportation mode that we are listing down, and these are the 8 parameters that we are talking about. One is the travel distance from source to railway station, presence of bike lanes. This because currently it's not there, but we are incorporating that because that's why we have to do a stated preference survey. And then congestion along the route that we are taking, if we can do some measures so that congestion is reduced. So accordingly, we are giving different scenarios like less congested, moderately congested. Again, these are the 2 ones. And walking distance, these are the different levels. And walking distance from bicycle parking location to the railway station, this may also influences a person's choice to use a bicycle, weather protection infrastructure, temperature, air quality, and so on. So when we build the scenarios, it is like this. For the scenario 1, travel distance is greater than 4 kilometers, presence of bike lanes partially present, then congestion, less congestion, walking distance less than 100 meters, weather protection not present, temperature 15 to 25, air quality bad, and parking cost 5 rupees per day or 150 per month. So will he choose to bicycle or not? So that's a dichotomous, the binomial response, and it's a yes or no. So a person can choose either. So based on that, we can take a decision if a person, for this particular scenario, will a person choose a bicycle or not. Similarly, we can compare it for other scenarios. So this is how conjoint analysis has been also incorporated in this particular survey. So this survey includes 3 parts. One is the basic RP part, then there is RP part but attitudinal surveys, and then there is a stated preference, which have been all combined in one survey. So these are the references that you can study. And to conclude, we can say that a good survey design is key to reach our study objective. A survey has got several distinct sections. The design should be such that in case of modification or addition, only certain sections are to be changed. Both RP and SP surveys have their own strength and should be used as per requirement. Thank you.